Aquaba, welcome to Tikyiile Talks. This is a platform where I, Tikyiile, have conversations with people from different walks of life who share their thoughts and pass their story thus far. I hope you enjoy. Let's say you have you're going through something like you might go into depression. How would you personally deal with it now?
It's hard as well because I wouldn't even know how to approach it with family members. I think with my parents it would be fine, but with my grandparents I wouldn't even know what to say. I think because they had very much of a culture of you just get on with things. You come to a new country, you don't know the language, you're learning everything, you're trying to earn money, you're working 100-hour weeks, and then your grandchild turns around and says that they're depressed when they've had all the privileges that you've worked so hard for. How do you understand it? And that's not the case for every grandparent. I'm sure it's not, but I think personally for me, I wouldn't even know how to talk about that kind of thing with mine because they're so supportive, which is great. But I think that because when you don't have the word to even express how you're feeling, it's really hard. And I think because the concept of therapists or counselling is so alien to them because you just don't talk about things in the South Asian community. You cover it up so you protect the image of your family. So that's one thing that I think I would actually struggle with.
Wow. So I'm guessing you probably talk to your friends more than you talk about your family.
Yeah, I think that it's so great that our generation is speaking out about more of these issues in terms of like mental health, and it's okay to ask for help. And I think, was it Mental Health Awareness Month like a couple of months ago?
Right, yeah. Okay.
So I think that it's really great that we're all talking about these issues a lot more and really understanding that it's not embarrassing to go and ask someone to help. It's not embarrassing to go to a counsellor. Whereas I think that in the South Asian community, it's not really spoken about as much. But I know that actually recently there was an Instagram page set up that's like South Asian therapists. And it's like a database from all over the world that you can find a South Asian therapist. Because also I think that another thing that people in the South Asian community perhaps suffer with is the fact that sometimes it's difficult if you have a non-South Asian therapist because maybe they don't understand the cultural issues that we go through. So I think there was like a meme set up or something that white therapists tell you that you should just talk to your family about how you're feeling. And you don't do that in South Asian communities. Like we can't talk to our family about that kind of stuff. So I think that that's one thing that it's so great that I'm seeing like these databases and stuff because it means that people can access South Asian therapists really easily. Whereas before, I don't actually know of any South Asian therapists. I couldn't even name you one. So I think that that's another thing that's really good that people are starting to speak out about these issues more.
I mean, because obviously it's an issue. It's not just it doesn't just happen to certain groups of people. It happens across the globe. Yeah. And obviously, like you're saying, if you've come to a new country and you don't know anything, it's even more of a reason for you to talk about those things because you're all in the same situation. So something that I may know that you may not know, we can help each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
But wow. That's interesting. Yeah. And you also talk about colorism. Yeah. On your page. Could you tell us what that is? Yeah. The definition of colorism.
So colorism is, I guess, just a discrimination between. This is a very vague definition. Right. But discrimination against those who are darker. So especially in the South Asian community, being light is seen as something that's attractive. As
where do you think that started from?
So, I mean, I think it predates colonialism, but definitely when the British invaded India or started colonising everything. It was very much seen as Eurocentric beauty standards were, again, the epitome of beauty. And in terms of... it has a lot to do with caste as well. So the caste system in India has been around for centuries, and those from the higher castes are seen as more beautiful in terms of...
Caste being what?
Caste system, so it's kind of like a feudal system. Again, that's a very vague definition, but you have castes in India. So the top caste will be the powerful ones, and then all the way down to the untouchables. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term, but the outcasts within India. And traditionally, the ones from the lower castes would have to work outside and get very dark in the sun, but it was seen as a sign of privilege if you were fairer skinned because you would stay inside and you wouldn't have to do the hard labour work. So unfortunately now all of these reasons have created this thing or this issue in South Asian communities where lighter skin is seen as something that's more beautiful. So even in Bollywood, all of the actors and actresses are fair-skinned, and there's a lot of colorism in terms of they will put darker foundation on the actress rather than just get a darker skinned actress to play the part. And then you have a lot of issues as well with actresses modelling or doing adverts for skin lightening creams, which is like $1 billion industry in South Asia. Not even just in India, in other countries in Asia, it's really bad. And it's seen as something, well, it's something that's so prevalent. So that is one thing that I've definitely spoken about in Dear Brown Girl.
What are your views on that and on all of that?
I mean, it's horrific. I think
so obviously your class is lighter skin, so you can't really relate as much to the darker people. But I mean, you've spoken to darker people. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I have to acknowledge my privilege in having lighter skin in South Asian communities, because it's something that I was always told, stay out of the sun growing up, stay out of the sun growing, you don't want to get too dark.
So as a kid, what like when somebody said that, obviously I'm guessing that went over your head, but now thinking about it.
Yeah, I think you start to internalize it quite a lot growing up, because you start to think that, oh gosh, like I need to make sure I stay out of the sun and don't tan, which is so ridiculous. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But I think that definitely for maybe cousins that I have who are darker skinned, it's something that the older generation will make comments on, and will say, you know, you need to stay out the sun, or gosh, you're so dark. And I think it's definitely something that I need to acknowledge my privilege on. So I don't want to speak for those who are darker skinned within the South Asian community, but it's definitely something that's still so prevalent. And you literally see it with the amount of adverts for skin lightening creams that there actually are still. So
what would you like? How would you advise? What would your advice be to the younger, like dark skinned people coming up who think, oh, hold on a second, I should probably try and bleach my skin? What would you say to them?
It's so upsetting to still hear that. I know that people still feel that way. And I think that it's really difficult. It's such a difficult issue to talk about. But I think that hopefully things are starting to change a bit more. But I think it's such a cultural issue that it needs to shift within the way that people think and the way that people view skin colour, really. And I think that it's not going to change overnight. It's going to require people to just understand that, again, it's where it comes from, like talking about caste issues and colonialism. It's not happened overnight. It's been centuries of imposing these views on South Asian communities. So yeah, it's a difficult one. And
because you also mentioned about log kya kayenge, which obviously I think you said it means like what will people think of you?
Yeah.
So how do you say you've experienced that as growing up and what you've seen around?
Yeah, it's like, what will people say? So it's hard because, again, with the whole thing of honour and shame, it's very much like, so Jasvinder actually talks about that within her book, and I think she has a TED talk as well, but she very much speaks about how when she didn't want to get married, it was like, well, what will people say? What will people think of you? Or even with like people who've suffered with mental health in South Asian communities, what will people say? They'll think you're crazy. And it's very much something that's used by older people, like older generations against younger generations, to stop the way that they act, or if there's something that they're doing that they don't think is traditional or respectful, they'll say, what will people say? And I think it's heartbreaking, actually, because it really like crushes the dreams of a lot of kids growing up. And I think that I saw this thing, and it was again just another meme on a South Asian page, but it was just like, it's like, what will people say? But people aren't paying your bills. People shouldn't dictate how they live your life. Why should you let the views of other people impose upon the way that you're raising your child? So definitely, I think that that's something that, unfortunately, it's still around so much. But in time, I think that hopefully, I would think it would change, but it's going to take a while.
How do you say that's also impacted stuff like careers as well? Because I'm sure certain careers are more looked up and down upon.
Yeah. Very much like law,
medicine, precisely. So like,
dentistry.
Would you say you studied law for that? Would you say that was a completely different reason?
I think that was one of the main reasons, because it was very much you have set career paths that are imposed on you. And don't get me wrong, I've really enjoyed my degree, I've loved it, but it's definitely something that maybe I didn't really consider other careers outside of the traditional Asian paths that are for you.
So let's say you could be a lawyer, but there's people who are lawyers and they've also got their own separate jobs. Let's say you were a lawyer, which you are now, but you also wanted to do like a separate career. What would you say that career would have been if it hadn't been shut down?
Oh wow, that's a good question. I don't actually know. I think I haven't actually let myself think about it too much, but there's so many little things I would maybe want to do. I'd love to maybe get involved a lot more in charity projects, especially kind of like the Karma Nirvana charity or things like that. Right. I did actually volunteer with the Halo Project in university, and that's a very similar charity to Karma Nirvana. Maybe something like that, like the non-for-profit sector. Right. Or even becoming like a counsellor. I think that, again, discussing issues in South Asian communities was something that I think that, because I've done a lot of that on my page, that I maybe would be interested in later life, like going back to uni and doing like a counselling course or something like that. So, because
I'm also guessing that some people haven't been as fortunate as you to go within that the looked upon career path. Like, how would you say people have they've dealt with the backlash from their parents and families?
I don't think I can really speak upon like how they've dealt with backlash.
Or what kind of backlash have you seen?
Yeah, I think that it's very much seen as when maybe they're doing a creative subject that the older generation don't really understand. It's very much like, well, what are they doing? Like,
where's this going to get you?
Where is it going to take them? Where are they going to end up? But then again, I think that that's just because the older generation had to do so much surviving. They had to learn survival. So perhaps they only see jobs that are always going to be needed, such as medicine, as something that's you should go into because you'll always have a job, and it'll give you social standing. Whereas because the creative industry, especially we're seeing right now with the pandemic, it's so hard
to find jobs to make money.
To find jobs in that. And I think that it's so great to go for those things, but I think the older generation don't really maybe understand it as much because it's not as of a steady job as maybe something as like, medicine, we'll always need doctors, you should go into that. Yeah. Whereas equally creative jobs are so important for our society, but unfortunately I think that the older generations can't see that as much. Yeah, because I know friends who doing degrees, not because they want to, but because they're saying, I'm doing this because my mum told me I have to do this, and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously it's like, well, then your parents kind of living your life through you, and they're not going to be there the whole time, and you're the one who actually going to be putting the hours in that shift that you don't really want to be. Yeah. It's sad because I think that it happens to so many kids in the South Asian community. It happens all the time. And it's really hard to break away from that because, like I said, your family are everything. How can you at 18 or 16 or however old you are, like starting to think about uni and apply, to then turn around to your parents and be like, actually, I don't want to be a doctor. Like, what? Yeah. It's so hard. So I think that it's difficult, but hopefully I think that talking about these issues and getting it out there, and there's so many pages that speak about issues in South Asian communities online that hopefully people can think that this is my life and maybe start to break away from the path that has been set from them by their family. But it's really hard, and I know that not everyone is lucky to have had the same privileges and stuff that maybe I have had. So So what kind of advice would you you give people who might want to, I don't know, they're now applying for university and they're thinking, I don't really want to do this, but I feel like I have to do this, but I really want to do something else. What kind of stuff would you say to them, to speaking to their parents and that? I guess I would say that maybe you only have one life, and I definitely think the pandemic has highlighted that. Yeah. And it's difficult because it's like, why do you want to be stuck in a job that you're going to hate just because your family have pushed you down that route? And I know some people don't really have a choice to turn around and say to their family, I don't want to do that. So I get it's difficult. But I think if they maybe have the opportunity, they should speak up if they can, because you don't want to be stuck in a job that you don't like or you hate for the rest of your life just because you're worried about what your family and the community would say. Would you say that, would you rather cut yourself away from your family if you had to for your job?
let's say you wanted to do something creative, and your family were really into that, and you said, right, I'm gonna do this. Or you told them you're gonna do, I don't know, let's say accounting or something like that. So you're gonna do accounting and you actually want to do art, and you put down you're gonna put accounting to them, but you actually end up doing art, and they find out and they think, all right, if you're actually gonna do this, we'll cut you from the family. What would you do?
Oh gosh. I don't know. It's so hard. It's difficult because no child wants to think that this is the last time they'll speak to their family, or I'm going to get cut off. But it's hard because I know that so many people are maybe stuck in jobs that they hate just because they've been pushed down that route their entire life. But I don't know. I think I'd want to follow my own path in life. I think that's the main thing, is that you've always got to stay true to yourself and follow your own path. Yeah.
Wow. I just thought it was a good question to ask you, because it's one of those where, do you follow your own path, or do you play it safe and stick with your family? Because surely your family should support you regardless if you do the right thing or the wrong thing. They should, right, it was the wrong thing to do, but we still love you and still support you. Because that's the whole part of being part of the community.
I think it's hard because I love my family so much, so it's difficult, but I know that they will largely, hopefully, be supportive most of the time, but I think it's difficult because maybe there is clashes with the older generation and my grandparents on things that maybe they don't understand that I do, or I like, or the way that I act or dress or cut my hair and stuff, but I think that you've got to stay true to yourself. That's one thing I've definitely realised from doing Dear Brown Girl, is that I'm not the only person that feels this way. A lot of people struggle with trying to find a balance with living their own life but doing what their family expect of them. So definitely I think that it's difficult, but people will figure it out. And I think that's what I'm still doing right now. Figuring out where to go in life,
What's their reaction been for the page, Dear Brown Girl?
It's been really good.
So like in terms of like the people who've like seen it, and also your family, so talk about the people who've seen it first.
It's been great because a lot of my friends have been really supportive and like supported me and like getting it out there, but also people, obviously randomers or from all over the world, a lot of followers that I'd never even thought that I would have got it past like 300 followers, to be honest.
You're still pretty over a K now, aren't you?
Yeah, but I never thought I'd get to that. I genuinely didn't think anyone would be interested in what I have to say or put out there. And
Why is that?
I think I kind of didn't really know what reception I'd kind of get with it. I think I just wanted to do it for myself more first. And then it was great that people started to follow it and share my stuff, which was really good. And then, I'm proud that I've done it, and I'm glad that I have, because it was something that I'd wanted to do for a while, but I think maybe I didn't really have the confidence to, but I'm glad I just like went for it and did it. Yeah.
And how's like your family taking it as well?
My grandparents don't know. I think they don't really understand social media, so I'm not sure what they think of it. But no, like all the rest of my family have been really supportive, and especially my cousins as well. Like we kind of all talk about the same thing. A lot of them have been born over here as well. So in terms of like finding that balance between like wanting to like be true to your culture and that kind of stuff, but wanting to live a Western lifestyle. And I think that we've all kind of shared the same experiences. So it's great because they've kind of even recommended stuff that maybe I should talk about on the page. So it's been great to have that kind of support as well. Yeah.
What do you think is the highest moment it's been so far on the page?
That's a very good question. Obviously getting asked to do stuff like this.
I guess,
Definitely. But also I think getting a follow from people with like 40,000 followers themselves, or having people with a really high following share my stuff, because it's crazy that they would even notice my page. So definitely I think those have been the high moments.
It also gives yourself like validation for you knew before that your stuff is good, and it's
and like wanting to carry on with stuff like that. And I've had a bit of a break from it for the past few weeks, which I think maybe I needed to take a step back and think about where I wanted to go with especially like finishing off my masters and stuff. But I've got a couple of ideas in the pipeline, so hopefully be working on that a lot more now. So,
good to hear. And what would you say the lowest part has been, or the hardest part?
I think being vulnerable with it and speaking out about maybe things that I've gone through as well on my page, because I wanted to I wanted to have it a bit personal as well. Obviously, I wanted to speak about issues in the South Asian community, but I wanted to maybe share my experiences.
Yeah, so make it relatable.
Yeah, other girls that were growing up in the South Asian community didn't feel so alone in the way that they felt. And maybe if they had grown up in white settings like I had, that they could maybe read one of my captions and think, oh God, this is me too. Like I've been through that as well. So definitely, I think just being vulnerable with stuff like that, because I never really spoke about it that much, or how I felt. But as I said before, university, I didn't really appreciate my culture that much. So it's been quite difficult for me to share those experiences and do these kinds of things where I can talk about it freely. So yeah, those have been like the hard moments, but worth it in the end. So,
would you say you've become more vulnerable as you got along in general in terms of everything?
Yeah, I would say so, because I think that I never really spoke about my culture or anything like that as much before until when I got to uni, and then I started realizing that I'd shied away from things for so long. I needed to kind of break down the barriers a bit in myself and let myself be vulnerable and talk about these things.
How hard is it? Have you found it being vulnerable?
I find it quite difficult. I'm quite a closed off person, I think, actually, at times. But I think it's been good. I think it's definitely been something that's been a step forward in the right direction to start to talk about these things. So I'm really glad that I have done it.
And like for those people who might read their pages thinking, oh, I can never actually say something like this, how would you say you'd help them to like help them become not even more vulnerable like publicly, but to like their friends and their families to like share their stories?
I think that it starts within yourself. Like, I had one girl message me that I knew from school that she said that she was like, thank you for setting this up. It's made me feel seen. And I think that that's the most important thing, because there isn't that much South Asian representation in the media. And if it is, it's very much like a skewed view, like that guy from The Simpsons. And like, do you know what I mean? In very terms of like, the traditional Indian stereotype of like smelling like curry and I don't know, like wearing a dot on your forehead or that kind of thing. Whereas I feel like there's so much more to the South Asian experience than that. And especially growing up over here. So I think it's good. That's why I've touched on that within my page and starting to talk about these issues a lot more. And I think that it was so great to receive messages like that, because she was saying that she felt seen, and hopefully that will make her discuss maybe these issues with her friends and family, or like go away and take something from it, which is what I think that I'm glad that people are starting to maybe pick up on those things of, because if I can even just make one person feel seen and reclaim their heritage and discuss issues with family and friends, then that's good. That's what the page is for.
What would you wish you knew before you started the page?
Ooh. That's a good question as well. I think just like general Instagram stuff, I think that it's been good to just, I think as long as you just stay true to yourself and you're doing the content that you want, you will gather followers and you will get a following, because you have something to say, like, and you should put it out there and just put your own twist on things. But definitely, I think just, it's hard as well. I think a lot of pages are really struggling with engagement and stuff like that at the moment. But I would say before I started it, I think I would just tell myself to just go for it and just like not care about what other people would say or think of it. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, that's good advice. So you started around, like you said, April, May. Yeah. You've had over 1,000 followers so far, which is really good. So if I come to you 5-10 years time, so exactly as you also finish your degree, 5-10 years time, where should I see you? Yourself, your page, your life, where will you be?
I would love to hit over 10,000 followers for the page, but that depends whether that's going to happen or not. I don't know. But hopefully, I would say I don't have like a set career path for 5 years. I think that as long as I'm happy within myself and I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I know that I followed my own path, then I'll have achieved what I wanted to achieve within 5 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, lived my own life.
Gosh, definitely. Because obviously you come up from the background you have, where it's everything, like you do everything not for yourself, but to honour your family and the people who are around you. To actually think, I'll honour my family, but I also won't necessarily put my family before myself. I'll put what I actually want to be doing with my life. And if they agree with me, that's great. If they don't, at least I know I'm comfortable with myself. I can continue to do that.
Exactly. I think that's a really good distinction, because just because you're following your own path doesn't mean you don't love your family or you don't care for them in the way that they've cared for you. I think that's really important, because a lot of people will say, oh gosh, well, she doesn't love her family, she's broken away, she's followed her own path. But you can still love your family and want your own life. Definitely. You can still love your family and know that there's a path for you that isn't the one that they've chosen for you. So just
because you don't agree doesn't mean that it's not for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Before I wrap it up, like to ask you, so what would you tell 4-year-old Saffy today? If you could sit her down and have a 10-minute conversation, what would you tell her?
That your culture is beautiful and you shouldn't let others make you feel that it's something to be embarrassed about. I would say that it might be a rocky few years, but you will love being brown, and knowing that having two different cultures to grow up with is great, rather than something that is difficult or like hard to deal with.
Right.
And I would say that you may not always know it at the time, but things are always going to work out, and you'll always figure out the path that you're meant to be going down.
Wow.
So,
I'm sure she'd love that advice.
Deep words for a 4-year-old. I'm not sure if she'd really appreciate that, but
she will one day. She has now. Definitely.
Yeah.
Have you got anything else you want to say before I wrap it up?
No, I don't think so.
Wow.
That's everything.
Gosh. So that's been episode 7 of Tikyiile Talks with Saffy Sall of Dear Brown Girl. Saffy Sall, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.